Act 1. Scene 1. The Ghost. The play begins on a cold night at Elsinore Castle in Denmark. Francisco, a soldier, is on watch duty and is soon relieved by Bernardo and Marcellus. The two discuss the ghost they've seen on previous nights, a spectre that resembles the recently deceased King Hamlet. Horatio, a scholar and friend of Prince Hamlet, joins them and is sceptical about the ghost. However, the ghost soon appears, and Horatio is shocked by its resemblance to the dead king. The ghost does not speak and vanishes. Horatio interprets the ghost's appearance as a bad omen for Denmark, which is in a tense situation with Norway. They decide to inform Prince Hamlet about the ghost. Scene 2. The New King. The scene shifts to the Grand Hall in Elsinore Castle, where King Claudius, the new ruler and brother to the deceased King Hamlet, is holding court. Claudius has married Queen Gertrude, his brother's widow, shortly after King Hamlet's death. Claudius addresses the court about the recent death and his marriage, then moves to state matters of state, particularly the threat posed by Fortinbras, the young Prince of Norway, who seeks to reclaim lands lost by his father in a battle with King Hamlet. Prince Hamlet is visibly grieving his father's death and disapproves of his mother's hasty remarriage. Claudius and Gertrude urge Hamlet to cast off his mourning and remain in Denmark, rather than returning to his studies in Wittenberg. Hamlet reluctantly agrees. Left alone, Hamlet expresses his deep sorrow and disgust at his mother's quick remarriage in a soliloquy, wishing he could die and contemplating the frailty of human existence. Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo enter and inform Hamlet of the ghost they've seen. Hamlet is intrigued and decides to join them on their watch to see the ghost himself. Scene 3. Laertes and Ophelia. In another part of the castle, Laertes, the son of the royal advisor Polonius, is preparing to leave for France. He warns his sister Ophelia about Hamlet's affections, suggesting that Hamlet, being a prince, cannot choose freely in matters of love. Ophelia agrees to be cautious. Polonius enters and gives Laertes lengthy advice on how to conduct himself in France, ending with the famous line, "To thine own self be true." He then inquires about Ophelia's relationship with Hamlet. Polonius dismisses Hamlet's affections as youthful infatuation and orders Ophelia to stay away from him. She obediently agrees. Scene 4. The ghost appears again. That night, Hamlet joins Horatio and Marcellus on the battlements. The ghost appears again and beckons Hamlet to follow it. Despite the warnings of his friends, Hamlet follows the ghost into the darkness. Scene 5. The ghost's revelation. The ghost reveals itself as the spirit of Hamlet's father, King Hamlet. It tells Hamlet that it was murdered by Claudius, who poured poison in his ear while he slept in his garden. The ghost urges Hamlet to avenge this foul and most unnatural murder, but also instructs him not to harm his mother, leaving her to heaven's judgment. The ghost then vanishes. Hamlet swears to remember the ghost's words and to focus on his revenge, asking his friends to swear secrecy about what they've seen and heard. Hamlet decides to feign madness to investigate the truth of the ghost's claim, and to buy time to plan his revenge. Act 2. Scene 1. Polonius and Ophelia. Polonius sends his servant Rinaldo to France to spy on Laertes. He then discusses with Ophelia how Hamlet has visited her in a dishevelled and agitated state. Polonius concludes that Hamlet's behaviour is due to his love for Ophelia and decides to inform the king. Scene 2. Claudius' concerns and the players. King Claudius, worried about Hamlet's erratic behaviour, summons Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, two of Hamlet's school friends, to spy on him. They agree to try to find out what troubles Hamlet. Polonius arrives and informs Claudius and Gertrude that Hamlet is mad with love for Ophelia. To prove this, they plan to stage an encounter between Hamlet and Ophelia, while Polonius and Claudius eavesdrop. Hamlet enters, and Polonius speaks with him. Hamlet's responses are strange and cryptic, further convincing Polonius of his theory. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern meet with Hamlet, who quickly realizes they have been sent by the king and queen to spy on him. Hamlet, frustrated, bemoans the meaninglessness of life in another soliloquy, comparing life to a prison. A group of actors, the players, arrive at the castle. Hamlet greets them warmly and asks them to perform a play called The Murder of Gonzago, but with an added scene that Hamlet will write. This scene will mirror the circumstances of King Hamlet's murder, allowing Hamlet to observe Claudius's reaction and determine his guilt. Hamlet resolves to confront the truth in a soliloquy that ends with the famous line, "The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." Act 3. Scene 1. The nunnery scene. Claudius and Polonius set their trap by arranging a meeting between Hamlet and Ophelia. They hide and listen as Hamlet enters, contemplating suicide in his famous "to be or not to be" soliloquy, questioning the pain and unfairness of life and the fear of the unknown after death. Ophelia enters and tries to return the gifts Hamlet gave her, but Hamlet denies ever giving them. He becomes increasingly angry, possibly sensing the trap, and tells Ophelia to go to a nunnery, which can be interpreted as both a convent and a brothel in the context. He harshly berates her, saying he never loved her, and storms off. Claudius, now believing that Hamlet's madness is not due to love but something more dangerous, decides to send him to England, ostensibly to collect tribute, but really to remove him from Denmark. Polonius suggests that Gertrude should speak with Hamlet in private to discover more about his condition. Scene 2. The play. That evening, Hamlet instructs the players on how to perform The Murder of Gonzago accurately. As the court assembles to watch the play, Hamlet acts erratically, speaking in riddles and making bawdy jokes, particularly to Ophelia. The play within the play begins, closely mirroring King Hamlet's murder as described by the ghost. Claudius reacts with visible agitation when the murder scene is enacted, rising and leaving the room. Hamlet and Horatio agree that this reaction proves Claudius's guilt. Gertrude sends for Hamlet, and on his way to her chamber, Hamlet finds Claudius alone, seemingly praying. Hamlet considers killing him then but refrains, reasoning that killing Claudius while he is praying would send his soul to heaven, which would not be proper revenge. Unbeknownst to Hamlet, Claudius is not actually repentant and cannot bring himself to pray sincerely. Scene 3. The closet scene. Hamlet meets with Gertrude in her chamber. Polonius, who is hiding behind a tapestry, spies on their conversation. Hamlet confronts his mother about her marriage to Claudius, accusing her of betrayal. When Gertrude cries out for help, Polonius also cries out. Hamlet, thinking it's Claudius hiding, stabs through the tapestry and kills Polonius. Gertrude, horrified, sees her son as mad, but Hamlet continues to speak vehemently, showing her two pictures, one of King Hamlet and the other of Claudius, comparing the two men and condemning her choice. The ghost reappears, visible only to Hamlet, reminding him of his purpose and urging him to comfort his mother. Hamlet tries to convince Gertrude to abandon Claudius and repent, but she is too shaken. Hamlet leaves, dragging Polonius' body away. Act 4. Scene 1. Claudius's plan. Gertrude tells Claudius about Polonius's murder. Claudius, alarmed, realizes that Hamlet is dangerous and must be dealt with. He decides to send Hamlet to England immediately, with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern accompanying him. Unbeknownst to Hamlet, Claudius has sent letters to the English king, ordering Hamlet's execution. Scene 2. Ophelia's madness and Laertes' return. Ophelia, grief-stricken by her father's death and Hamlet's behaviour, descends into madness, singing songs about death and betrayal. Her distress disturbs the court. Laertes returns from France, enraged by his father's death and demanding justice. Claudius manipulates Laertes' anger, turning it against Hamlet. Claudius and Laertes plot to kill Hamlet, proposing a fencing match where Laertes will use a poisoned sword. Claudius also plans to give Hamlet a poisoned drink as a backup. Scene 3. Ophelia's death. Gertrude enters and announces that Ophelia has drowned. In a stream, possibly a suicide. Laertes is devastated, and the mood in the court turns even darker. Act 5. Scene 1. The graveyard. The final act opens with two gravediggers preparing Ophelia's grave, discussing whether her death was a suicide. Hamlet and Horatio enter, and Hamlet muses on the inevitability of death, picking up the skull of Yorick, the king's jester, and delivering the famous "Alas, poor Yorick" speech. A funeral procession arrives, and Hamlet realises it's for Ophelia. He is overcome with grief and anger, jumping into the grave and grappling with Laertes in a display of mutual grief and rage. They are pulled apart, and Hamlet declares his love for Ophelia. Scene 2. The duel. Back at the castle, Hamlet tells Horatio how he discovered Claudius's plot to have him executed in England, and how he outwitted Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, leading to their deaths instead. A courtier, Osric, arrives to invite Hamlet to the duel with Laertes. Hamlet, although suspicious, agrees to the match. Before the duel begins, Hamlet apologizes to Laertes, attributing his earlier actions to madness. The duel commences. Hamlet scores the first hit, but refuses the poisoned drink offered by Claudius. Gertrude, unaware of the plot, drinks from the poisoned cup and collapses. Laertes wounds Hamlet with the poisoned sword, but is then wounded by it himself during a scuffle. As they both begin to die, Laertes confesses the plot, blaming Claudius. Hamlet, enraged, forces Claudius to drink the poisoned wine, killing him. With his dying breath, Hamlet names Prince Fortinbras of Norway as the successor to the Danish throne. Hamlet dies in Horatio's arms, who, devastated, considers suicide, but is persuaded by Hamlet to live on and tell his story. Fortinbras arrives with his army, takes control of Denmark, and orders a respectful military funeral for Hamlet. Conclusion. The play ends with a sombre reflection on the cycle of violence and the destruction caused by revenge and corruption. Hamlet's tragic journey from grief-stricken prince to avenger leaves a trail of death and sorrow, illustrating the heavy cost of revenge and moral ambiguity.